Welcome to RSA Conference 2024. We're here recording live from Broadcast Alley in Moscone West. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me today is Andy Grolnick, CEO of Grolnick. How you doing, Andy?
Nice to be here, yeah.
Good to have you. Grolnick, interesting company. I've been following them for a while. They've done a lot of interesting community stuff over the years.
Yep.
But today we're talking about achieving cyber resilience and strengthening security posture.
Right.
Clearly something everybody's struggling with. We even have security posture management is now a category of products.
Yeah, it's a
right?
category, right.
So it's all about understanding your posture, measuring it. And starting there, prioritizing threats, threat detection and incident response. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, I think the reality is most security operations teams, security teams are just overwhelmed. They don't have enough people.
Alert fatigue.
Yeah, and then they're overwhelmed with alerts coming from all kinds of things, and they don't always have the expertise. So it's critical to have, where do you start, and you can't necessarily focus. So one, having solutions that cut down the noise is really helpful, right? A lot of, so they're not overwhelmed. But even with that, the volume of alerts and things you're going to get are just too high. So having risk prioritization of solutions that can prioritize the risk of those alerts, so you can, maybe on a scale of 0 to 100, so you can, as a team, say, okay, here are the ones I need to focus on. Here are the highest threats to our organization, and if I only get to half of them, I may make sure I get to the highest priority ones. Yeah.
And just for my own curiosity, what are some of the things you would prioritize a threat based on?
Sure. I mean, a couple of examples, would be that we've seen some of our customers look for and catch at times is a lot of hackers and the bad guys out there don't break in. They actually log in. Right?
Sure.
And I heard I didn't make that up. George Kurtz was speaking the other day, and I heard him share that, and it really does. It's really true, and it resonates. So the most common way in, is stolen credentials or finding legitimate credentials of an employee or a vendor and so on. So how do you detect that? So there are a couple examples. One is you might have, say, a bank employee in Chicago logging in, and 3 hours later those credentials are used to log in Shanghai.
Right.
Well,
impossible travel.
It's an impossible travel. The Concorde doesn't go that fast, and
it's out of service.
We don't have the Star Trek techniques
teleporters.
Yet. We don't have that yet, and so there's obviously an issue, and so being able to not only detect that but then shut the action to take is shut that account down. So that you immediately cut off any bad behavior that can happen from the illegitimate person logging in, and you'll inconvenience, if it's me, the CEO of the company, it's a slight inconvenience, right? But hey, I'd rather cut that off at the pass, and so that's you want to get there's this notion of mean time to detection, mean time to response. So you want to detect as quickly as possible. That being said, a lot of threat actors will not take bad actions right away. In fact, the average breach, they'll sit there 250 plus days before being detected. And so another example of, how do I, once they're in, the first example is, you get them right as they're trying to get in. But once they're in, and the reality is, no matter how good a perimeter defense you have, it's not if, it's when someone's going to get through, because they're always they're sophisticated, changing their tactics, and so what I want to be looking for is anomalous behavior, and this is actually an AI technique that SIEM solutions, SIEM solutions, have been using for years. And there's a lot of talk about AI here, but machine learning. So what the example there, in particular around all the users in my network, it's a little like the old statistical process control, where I learn what normal behavior is for you, Adrian, or any user in my environment. When do they typically log in? What applications do they access, and so on.
And traditionally, I remember when I was in chief incident handler, at financial institutions, I would have to put together that baseline myself.
Right.
I'm doing this manually. Okay, what's normal for this person?
Right.
And does this fit that normal baseline?
Yeah, that's exactly. And so,
But
I'm sure that was a lot of work, right? And
a lot of we didn't even have browser tabs back then. So I would say a lot of tabs open, but a lot of browser windows open.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so wouldn't it have been nice to automate all that and have software basically tell me, and then I see those credentials access a financial application they never access. I want to get an alert. Now it may be not nefarious, but it could be someone who got in and just kind of laid low waiting for a time to kind of go after the data, right?
Yeah, I'm really dating myself there. Browsers didn't have tabs yet. I wanted to kind of zoom in a little bit on something you said earlier. This is a trend I'm starting to see. Are you finding that people are really willing to automate the remediation step to disable an account? Because I remember a few years ago, we saw a lot of technologies that had those capabilities, but nobody really had the guts to turn them on. But it seems like ransomware maybe, people are more willing now to create a little bit of disruption to avoid a lot of disruption.
Absolutely. I think it's a really interesting question, because my work in this space goes back to 2005.
Yeah.
And my previous company, we actually...
That's when I bought my first SIM.
That was kind of the early days, and there wasn't a lot of automation of remediation in then, but we actually implemented that in 2007, 2008.
Right.
And at that time, you're absolutely right, most customers were not willing to...
I remember ArcSight pitching us on that, and I was like, you're out of your mind.
Yeah, people. And so what we actually put in was an optional approval layer, right? Which is... Which is...
Somebody's still going to review it.
So someone can review it. You could have 2 layers of it. And so, but I think you're right. Fast forward to today, people have just gotten more comfortable with it, right? And so the first example I gave, which is the 2 people logging in at the same time, a lot of it, most people are comfortable with the risk. I don't even need to review that, right? Because the impact would be low, right? But if it's another action, turns off my website, I may want to review that, and someone needs to, before we shut that down, because you may be shutting down your business, but I think to your question, and people have gotten more comfortable. There's still some reticence to do that.
Probably depends on the company, the company culture.
Absolutely,
I worked for a credit card processor. In the early days, that's where I deployed that first SIM. And anything that stopped the flow of transactions, absolutely not.
Exactly.
Like we put an IPS inline once, and it failed closed once, never again.
No, you're absolutely right.
Never again.
So it really varies.
The transactions must flow.
Exactly. That's the core business, right?
So what are some of the key challenges companies struggle with today with implementing something effective from a detection and response perspective? Because there's a lot of data to pull in there.
Right.
As I mentioned in an earlier interview, the security team doesn't actually do security work. Oftentimes they don't have the ability to switch things on and off. To shut down accounts and things like that.
Absolutely. And so I think the the key challenges happen to be the key areas we're focused on at Grolnick from an innovation perspective.
Okay.
I would say, and they're kind of three pillars of where so one is, we talked about the noise earlier, so just how do you make the threat detection and response as both accurate and effective, and reduce the noise, right?
Sure.
So using techniques to cull down, here's a smaller population of things to focus on, right? So that's key, and that's an area we continue to kind of try innovate in and get better at, because the more you do that, the easier it's going to be, particularly for teams that just, the largest banks, right, have huge teams, right, but most organizations don't, and so that's one. I'd say the other is the complexity of the workflow of SIMs. I mean, you deployed one in 2005, right? They've improved a lot, but still today, the complexity is too high, and the workflow can be disjointed, right? So how do you make things more intuitive and smoother, so I can go from data to detection to remediation quickly?
It's kind of notoriously the highest labor product to both integrate and manage, right?
It is. It is. They get it up and running. So and it's, but at the same time, it's critical. It's the hub of the SOC. You got to have it. It's
most of your visibility.
It's your visibility. It's your central intelligence. So, and I think the last area is, I would say, cost of ownership. I think the days of, and we're seeing that this year and last year, where customers have unlimited budget to, security budgets. Those days are gone. You've got to be, security teams got to be thoughtful on how they, and where they invest and how they invest. So we're, it's not just the licensing costs of the software, it's also if complexity is high, I need more people.
Labor costs.
Labor costs are huge, and a lot of and then the infrastructure costs. So depending on how the solution's architected, I may need a lot of
on-prem
CPU.
storage, cloud storage.
Yeah, exactly. Storage, CPU, infrastructure, all that. So we're zeroed in on helping in all three of those areas, and then on the TCO side, all three of those vectors, if you will. Yeah.
And in the last couple minutes, how do you make sure that you get everybody aligned, not just on the security team, but in the organization in general? Because it's, SIM touches a lot of different things.
Right.
And there might be the expectation at the executive level, that there's good detection and response in place, and security analysts might tell you something different if you talk to them directly versus the conversation you have with the CISO. How do you get them all aligned?
Get everyone aligned, and nowadays boards are very interested. It goes beyond the CISO, right? They, the reporting. Some of the new laws, public companies have to report within a certain period of time. And there's penalties and fines in some cases. So the boards are very interested today. So I think
you have to determine materiality.
Right. So you've got to. Back to what you were saying, first of all, I got to have visibility, the best visibility I have, and be efficient. And when something happens, I've got to be able to take action and report on it. So one way is, we talked about like mean time to detection, mean time to response. So that's one way to kind of, for the practitioners to be able to kind of
metrics to report,
those metrics, and so we include those capabilities within the solution to help them report up to management and the CISO, and then have dashboards that kind of summarize how the solution's being used, where it's being effective, and reports on that. So, and those can be used to share it with the board. And I think the other I think important thing to your question is it is kind of an annual review of the priorities, because no team can boil the ocean and cover everything at once. So every year we do this in our company. We're a security company, but we have the same challenges. And so our CISO puts together a plan, thinks about the priorities of where our risks are, makes recommendations. We approve that, and then it's also the audit committee on the board reviews that once a year for governance reasons, right? And just make sure. And then once you're aligned on that, you've got the strategy and the things you're going after,
Right.
And everyone's kind of on the same page, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for joining me on Security Weekly today.
Yeah, it was great to meet you.
It was a great discussion.
Yeah.
And to learn more, you can visit securityweekly.com/Graylog RSAC. And you can see all our RSA conference coverage at securityweekly.com/RSAC. And stick around, we've got another interview coming up soon.